Take two.
I'm going to let this
Action.
guy appear tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, that's Gray is going to, instead of Earl Grey, you've got Gray. No.
Yeah. Well, welcome to Total Disclosure across all platforms, guys. We explore mysteries of the unknown, from sightings to conspiracy theories. I can't even get through this right now. I am so embarrassed. We dive deep into the unexpected. Just if you want to like the show, leave us a review on Apple, Spotify. It helps the algorithm. Hit subscribe, and yeah, more funny moments to be had, I guess, with or the alien overlords or the CIA just tapped in. I don't know.
I don't know. You can do a blooper reel now.
Earl,
Hello.
I had this. I literally gave the date of disclosure. I gave so much information in that intro that the public will now never see. But
man.
You are the state director for MUFON of Southern California, my brother. And I thought, who better to talk to about abductions and if they're still happening than you, as you are the legacy of Kathleen Martin, who is a friend of the show. You actually did a cameo in our episode with her. It was super awesome. For anyone who wants to check that out, it's in the archives. It was an amazing episode. But you are a part of the Experiencer resource team. And you really go above and beyond. And the subject I named the show tonight is, are abductions still happening? Before we get into that, I want to talk to you about some of the stuff that's been going on headline wise in the recent weeks. So let's start with you wrote a recent article about the Arrow historical report. It seems that you were a little bit muzzled, if I must say. No. By me reading it, I deduced that maybe you had some more thoughts.
Well, I mean, I do write a regular column for Outer Limits magazine, which is it's a UFO periodical that's based in the United Kingdom. And my friend Chris Evers, he's the publisher. And normally I write about one of my cases every single month. MUFON, about 6 years ago, they okayed for me to publish, the better redacted cases. I take the names and all that out so that, people are not doxxed. God forbid. And I kind of adhere to HIPAA law standards because I'm a retired nurse of 40 years. Retired sort of right before COVID hit. But anyway, I was asked by Chris to write something different this month. My views on the report that came out from Arrow, Sean Kirkpatrick, who was the head of that. And I have friends that spoke in front of the Arrow group
Right.
and congressional members, Bob Salas, David Schindley in particular. Both of them had similar experiences where they had been the commanding officers of military ICBM bases and had incursions of UFOs on their bases that caused the missiles to be intentionally taken offline, sitting there in their launch bays. It wasn't an electro, so I used to kind of figure, well, maybe it was an electromagnetic pulse that they used. No, it was much more refined than that. And the EMP would have taken out the radio, the computer systems, and it would have even taken out their access to oxygen. It was an underground capsule that these guys were in that was totally enclosed against nuclear war, God forbid, if it happened, that they would be able to do their business, which would be to, retaliate to whoever had destroyed our side of the earth. And, if they were successful, the whole earth would be destroyed, right?
Well, you do know, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
sure.
You do know that if a nuke is launched in our direction and it is confirmed then we have a shoot. What is it called?
Iron
So
Dome, I think they call it now,
no,
right? Or something
no.
like that.
It's basically, if a nuke is confirmed coming our direction, the immediate response is to empty, because they basically essentially are saying use it or lose it. So are they launch everything that we have.
That's
And
horrifying.
yeah, it's
Horrifying.
an absolute. Annie Jacobson talks about it in a book.
Mutually assured destruction. Yeah, I have Annie's
Yeah,
book. I have a couple of her
yeah,
books.
she's
Well,
she's great.
this is what was brought to Congress. Okay, this is what was brought to the Arrow investigation that was supposedly open-minded. Well, you know, Project Blue Book was supposedly open-minded, and the Grudge Report, and you know, kind of goes
Mhm.
back. So anyway, I had, you know, I'm dear friends with Bob Salas, and I'm friends with David Schindley as well. I had dinner with David when I was in Oregon last year, and we talked about this, you know, mano a mano, about what their job was and what happened to both of them. I mean, it seems like our visitors, if they want to make a point, they do it twice, right? The overflight of the White House, or of the Capitol building, that happened in 1952. They did it once, and then they came back again. They overflew it again just to make sure that it was noticed, you know. And the same thing happened, you know, it happened in Malmstrom Air Force Base, and that happened in Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota. And both times it was targeted at the missiles. It turned them off. Not like you could flip a switch and bring them back online. They had to take these missiles out and retool them. They were unlaunchable, unusable. And that I believe is what our visitors are telling us. They don't want us to destroy ourselves. They don't want. They're absolutely against mutually assured destruction, which we are still playing with the idea of. You know, well, nobody gets out of here alive, right? You know, that's Jim Morrison's philosophy of life, and we all know that Jim Morrison didn't last that long, and we probably wouldn't either, with such horrible kinds of you know, attitudes about stuff. But anyway, this is what was presented to Arrow and to Sean Kirkpatrick. And so when I read the Arrow report that came out, I was, as the Brits say, I wasn't exactly well shuffed. I was quite angry about it. I was very angry about it. And so I wrote a piece, but we don't want to be litigated either. If it's in print, you know, I guess that would be more of a possibility. So I kind of, I didn't change my article. I mean, I think that you can catch my outrage about this whole thing, about how it was all shuffled under the carpet. And Kirkpatrick said that there was no evidence whatsoever that was presented to him. And I'm sorry, I've heard the evidence myself firsthand. I have copies, word for word copies of what they presented to Congress and to the Arrow, the people that were involved in this. It was very, very compelling. And I would certainly like to know what natural phenomenon it could have possibly have been, or what they could have mistaken for you know, UFOs, when they had both cases. You know, a lit up UFO, a disc, came over the base. It hovered over the base camp in both instances. People were huddling, calling down on the radio, freaking out. Oh my God, you know, it's a UFO, it's a flying saucer. And this thing, you know, targeted the missiles, shut them off, but left, thankfully, you know, didn't affect the oxygen or the computer systems or the radio systems. Everything else was, you know, just the same as ever. But I don't think that we have a way to do this. But this happened in the 1960s. It happened 1967 and 1968, a few months away from each other.
It's important to note that not only did those events happen here, but after the fall of the Soviet Union, George Knapp recovered files that this happened in Russia as well. And it happened to a degree where they almost launched against us, thinking that it was us that shut their nuclear weapons off. It almost triggered a world war. So and then there's been, I mean, and these nuclear weapons, it's not like they're linked to each other. To shut one off is a feat in itself. To shut 10 to 12 off when they're not connected, they're separated by miles, and they're meant so if one goes down, they all don't go down. To shut them all off and then turn them back on, and they took these things apart piece by piece, and there was nothing wrong with them.
That's right. Well, they were turned off, but they had to be they had to take them out of the silos, and they had to fix them. They were shut off, and it didn't make any sense, but it happened twice in a row. Right. And I think, and there was an incursion of a flying saucer. A flying saucer. It was a disc in both cases, you know. And in one, it was more of like a plasma, bright red plasma colored disc. But, you know, I mean, we don't have anything like that. We certainly didn't have anything like that back in 1967 and 68. And boy, I would sure like to know what natural phenomena that could have been. So to say that, you know, the disingenuousness of that report that came out, it definitely got my hackles up. I mean, my original, what I wanted to say about Sean Kirkpatrick was kind of pulled back is a British audience, okay? And you know, you can get away with certain words in Britain that maybe you can't get away with here. But my original, you know, description of Kirkpatrick was just another wanker in the circle jerk of officialdom's disinformation campaign. You know. I'm still proud of that line. I think it is pretty accurate. It's not in the article that got pulled, but now you have it. That was, you know,
that's my new title for this video. Or at least
I'm good with it. They can go after me, I guess, if they want. You know?
Sam actually brings up a good point, because a lot of people saying that this is the modern day Project Blue Book. I would disagree with that statement wholeheartedly, because at least Project Blue Book got boots on the ground, investigated. Yeah, of course, they had higher ups that had predetermined outcomes, you know, i.e. swamp gas and all these things. And, you know, J. Allen Hynek later on in his life, you know, became a believer in almost a knower, if you will. But
I got my Hynek shirt on. Check it out.
Yeah,
I was hanging out with his sons last night.
Well, I'm hoping to get his. Yeah, I'm hoping to get his son on the podcast. Thanks to my good friend Earl Anderson. But we'll see. Total disclosure, audience. We'll see.
I sent him your info, so I told him you're a friend, so he'll probably.
But well, so God, I forget what I was saying. I lost my train of thought.
We were talking about Condon and the Blue Book, and it is Mach 2.
Yeah, it's definitely more of a Condon style play. It is not.
He had his mind made up.
Yes,
Condon did, before the evidence came in, and with Blue Book, it was definitely messed with, and they were definitely the gatekeepers of information were not giving Hynek and Valet and company the better reports. They were gatekeeping those.